Okay, picture this. Your D&D party is traveling through the mountains and you come across this serene mountain village. It's snowy, it's cold, it's actually kind of miserable, and then all of a sudden, descending from the sky. Oh, by the way, this video is part of a collaboration with a bunch of other enablers. Content creators. Anyways, descending down from the sky, you see a swarm of hundreds and thousands of birds. You see the swarm completely envelop a person, and as the birds ascend back into the sky, that person is no longer there. Just as quickly as they came, the birds are now gone. This is the plot hook for an adventure that I wrote, and I'm going to be giving a walkthrough of this adventure. So if that plot hook was interesting for you, then the rest of this video is for you. Right, so this adventure starts in the village of Rosdorf. It's nestled between two mountains. It is cozy and idyllic. There's snow and like the tall slanted roofs. It's mostly just residential cabins, fishing huts, and also a haberdashery called the Bait and Switch. Some notable NPCs. We got Mayor Clancy, who runs the town, a red-cheeked man with clean-shaved face and balding red hair. There's going to be more about him later. I'd start the adventure by having your level 8 party. Your party's level 8, by the way. I would just have them stumble upon this town. Maybe they have to stay in here. Maybe they have to resupply or something like that. I mean, they're level 8. They might have other ways of getting around. I'm assuming you have already run a campaign up to level 8 and you're taking this adventure and you're kind of putting it in there like a little module. If this is the case, I'd start with giving them like a half hour of like playtime of just sort of like exploring the village, basically talking to NPCs, checking out the haberdashery, all that jazz. Occasionally the NPCs will make reference to the birds, as one would reference God in passing. So like thank God turns into thank the birds, or God help me as in birds help me. Players might be a little confused by this, and then they will get their answers soon when the swarm of birds descends upon the town. In the Google Doc, I have a little description. The sky becomes alive with movement as an undulating formation of avian creatures begins its descent towards this quiet village. It's a little wordy, but I think it's very like evocative language. So jot that down. After the attack, the players might have a lot of questions. All they can really glean from the townspeople, once they're safe from the swarm, is that about once a week, hundreds of thousands of birds descends upon the town, and then 5 people from the village go missing and they're never seen again right after. So they're assuming that the birds are somehow taking these people and going into a nearby mountain. Anyone who's taken by the birds never returns. The villagers haven't been able to rescue these people since no one has been able to pass through the mountain range that they would need to pass through in order to get to the mountain that the birds are taking these people to. Of course, the player characters are going to want to go to the mountain. Who wouldn't want to go to the mountain after this happens? I mean, if they don't want to go to the mountain, I mean, I guess they could decide not to go to the mountain. I don't know what they would just do something else. If the players decide to do something else, you can stop watching the video. The mountain range is frigid and rocky, dotted with many lakes and streams. Think like northern Sweden. For all of those who are familiar with northern Sweden, that's a frame of reference for you right there. There's going to be some challenges along the way to the mountain that they need to get to. I didn't include this in the adventure, but you could make like rock climbing checks in this instance, like athletics checks to try to move around and stuff like that. Or maybe they have to succeed a dex saving throw to avoid slipping on ice if you want to make climbing the mountains pretty difficult. Some challenges they will also face along the way is the pond. As player characters are taking rest by a deep pond, the dark cloud of birds begins its approach towards the party. Now, the only way that the party can successfully avoid the birds in its entirety would be having to jump inside of the pond. If the players don't do that, then you roll initiative. The birds will continue to fight until they lose about 60 hit points of damage. They're not here to kill the player characters. They just want to like kind of with them a little bit. Once they take 60 points of damage, the birds will take flight and retreat from combat. If the players do jump into the pond, they have to make a DC 13 Constitution check. On a failed check, they take 1 level of exhaustion due to hypothermia, which you can get rid of the exhaustion with a DC 10 medicine check over a short rest. So you don't have to long rest in order to get rid of this level of exhaustion. Another challenge is Boulder Hill. As the party begins to ascend the mountain range, 1 bird for each player character will begin to watch the party as they travel. As the party gets closer to the nearby mountains, a large boulder will be hurled towards the player character at the front of the party. Now, I just want to emphasize that these boulders are being thrown from, it's like a catapult-esque the way these boulders are being thrown. It takes a DC 14 dex save to successfully dodge a boulder. On a fail, you take 4d12 points of bludgeoning damage. Now, what the party doesn't know is that these boulders are being thrown by the main villain, Rook the Giant. There's a storm giant who takes Sanctum up on that mountain, who's also the main villain, and he's just hurling these rocks at the player characters to try to get them to leave. Now, the reason why the boulders are so accurate is because the giant is able to magically see through the eyes of the birds, which is why the birds are following the party as they're making their way through. He's seeing through the perspective of the birds, throwing rocks, and then using their perspective to like calculate trajectory. If the party kills the birds, then the boulders become too inaccurate to actually pose a threat. However, once one bird is killed, it will be replaced within 1 minute. So the party will have to kill every single bird within them inside of a minute in order to avoid more birds coming at them. Once the players are able to get to this point in the adventure, they're going to be able to enter the Storm Giant Sanctum, which... oh wait, shit, hold on. All right, this will work. So the players are going to enter in through this area right here. They're going to be led into this room where on the walls they see carvings depicting giants giving orders to flocks of birds, which destroy towns and lift people into the air. The giants are wielding the rune Ven Kong Vind, which means friend king wind, which is the rune that the giant is using to give orders to the birds. It's just a little piece of information that the players can use later on. When they go into the second room right here, it is a wide stone chamber. So there's this little hallway right here, right? And then this space right here is just a 10-foot pit. This is where the storm giant is. Now the storm giant is overweight with wrappings around his eyes with a beard so unkempt that multiple birds are currently using it as their nests. Now the idea is the party is going to move along this hallway, and as they do, the storm giant will constantly be in melee range of the characters. So the characters are either always being attacked or taking attacks of opportunity from the giant. I should mention that this encounter is fully intended to be a TPK, which, okay, yeah, I definitely need to explain my reasoning on that. My lav mic is attached to my animal style fries. So the whole point of this adventure is really just experimenting with plot structure. I wanted to write something that follows the monomyth, hero's journey, the 12 steps that Vogler writes about. It's part of a theory that I have where you can improve your storytelling in D&D by integrating the monomyth. There's going to be a whole video about it coming up. I did make a video about how to do milestone leveling based off of the hero's journey, but I have a lot more to say about that. Point is, there's going to be a point in the adventure where there's a call to adventure, a meeting the mentor, but that also means there's going to be an ordeal. And what the ordeal means is the player characters are going to face the worst case scenario and they will be defeated. Now, some people call this a TPK. Now, that's technically not incorrect. It is fully intended for the heroes to fail. Absolutely. But it is also intended for the players to rise back up from their failure and succeed. Heroes were meant to die so that they can be reborn. And I don't mean like revivify. I mean like poetically reborn, you know what I mean? The heroes die, they learn something new, and then they return stronger than they were before. So yeah, once the players are all knocked unconscious by the storm giant, they're going to wake up inside of this room right here, which is called the ice box. This is a stone carved chamber lined with a thick layer of ice. Partially embedded into this ice wall are the victims of the storm giant's birds. Villagers, animals, casks of alcohol are all frozen into the ice wall lining the room. A DC 19 strength check is required to break yourself free from the ice, and a DC 16 strength check to break someone else out of the ice. ice. The players look around. There are going to be 4 commoners that are still alive but unconscious inside of the ice. Periodically, the storm giant will enter the chamber and pluck a meal from the wall of ice. I should also mention that at this point, the players have benefited from a long rest. Even though they've been unconscious in the ice, you'd think, oh, they probably wouldn't get fully rested. No, they're fully rested at this point. We want them to be fully charged, fully good, because the climax is going to be coming up soon, and we want them to have all their resources ready for that. So, long rested. Once the players have gotten themselves out of the ice and they're ready to explore the rest of the dungeon, there's 2 different pathways that they can choose. The first one will lead them to the playroom. This is a stone-carved room with 5 ogres that take residence in here. These ogres have the mental capacity and personality of rowdy toddlers. When they notice the player characters, they will wail at them. If the player characters don't leave, they will go into a fit and charge at the party, initiating combat. These ogres are the adopted children of the storm giant. There's nothing really to gain in here. It's just a weird room with toddler ogres. Players can also go down this path, which leads them to the aviary. This room is a 60-foot tall stone carved cylinder with a hive of tunnels and perches that contain the collective birds, and that's birds in bold letters. On top of the cylinder is a rune carved stone containing the runes Ven Kong Vind. These runes bind the birds to the storm giant, allowing him to give them commands and see through their eyes. The rune stone is a 5-foot tall boulder embedded in the stone. It'll take a collective DC 30 strength check to displace the boulder, but on a successful strength check, the boulder will roll down, dropping the entire 60 feet. On a failed check, the birds are alerted and attack the player characters. Dropping the runes from the 60-foot height will cause it to shatter and the rune magic to dispel. If the rune stone is destroyed, the birds are no longer hostile to any player characters, and the giant will gain the blinded condition, swinging wildly and inaccurately at any perceived threat. So the intended design of this adventure is to have the players fail when they first meet the villain, then they recover, and then they discover new information. In a way, it's a puzzle they have to solve before they're able to defeat the villain, which I feel like kind of goes into the same vein as the monomyth, where you go through an ordeal, and then you are rewarded afterwards with new information, and then you take that reward to resurrection, which is the climax of the adventure. Or at least the climax of this self-contained story that we have. Once the player characters are able to destroy this runestone, that giant is blinded and they're going to have a much easier time defeating him. They can rescue the commoners that they found in the other room, and they're able to save the day and complete the journey. Now, I went over this adventure pretty quickly, but you'll find when you actually run it that the combats are probably going to take a while. Talking to NPCs and role-playing is going to take a while. You could really take this adventure pretty slow. You can take it pretty easy. Just let the player characters follow the flow and find their own path. If you want to see how I wrote this adventure, the prompt I was given to actually come up with this, and also what other people came up with from that same prompt, you should check out the original video. Link is going to be in the description. You're going to be able to see all the different people I collaborated with in order to make this happen. You also may have noticed I have not uploaded a video. Subscribe.